What's up, everybody? We are back with another big trade review. I was about to say Epic Collection review, but we're not. But these are pretty big trades from DC, and it collects the entire Superman Death and Return of Superman saga, and spoiler, Superman returns. So last time we left off, we had an introduction to these Supermen who were running around wearing the big S. And this time we kind of get a conclusion of this. And this goes through Action Comics 689 to 692. Got an annual in here, which follows that breeding storyline or brooding storyline, I forget what it's called. Adventures Superman 503 to 505, Adventures Superman Annual, Green Lantern 46, Superman 80 through 83, and then the Man of Steel 24 through 26. All right, so there are 4 Supermen running around, as I mentioned last time, if you just tuned into this video. Superman died, Superboy shows up, Cyborg Superman shows up, Man of Steel, who's literally in steel, he's like Iron Man but not, shows up. And then there's like a visored Superman also. And so everybody's trying to figure out who's the real Superman. And it's a pretty good, I'd say it's a pretty good, sort of mystery going on right here. You get Supergirl hanging out with Superboy, and there's a lot of backstory going on with Superboy and who he is, and this Action Comics kind of sums up all of them, and we get a fight between Visor Superman and the Steel Superman, which then goes into the next Man of Steel issue. And Visor Superman's really, he's really a, I'd say, rough and tumble kind of dude, and he takes no prisoners. He's like, you know what, if you're evil, you're going down. And he kind of gets a lesson from Steel Superman of like, hey, what are we even fighting for? And he kind of backs down a little bit. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor's trying to control all of them. And Supergirl's just kind of sitting there not knowing what Lex is doing and dating him. And he tries to hide what he is there. So Lex, this gal is a weapons dealer who is trying to mess with the Steel Superman, and Lex is going in with her and trying to set a trap for Steel Superman, who, goes into it anyway, as any good hero does. And we get a pause in our story here. So then we get to this Bloodlines bit, which there's these aliens from another planet, and this is, so I researched this after the last one, because I was a little confused. There's 2 issues of these annuals in the last one that have this, and each one of them features one of the Supermen who is then hunting down a vampire killer, but they're really not killers. It's just people go missing and then they show back up with superpowers and they don't remember who they are as you kind of run into it. Very bizarre. Not sure exactly what the aliens want or what the full plan is. Apparently, this is a 23-part crossover through the DC universe, and DC then had a Bloodlines 1 and 2 to wrap up all the crossover events. So it's just every superhero in the DCU deals with these for several issues, and they're actually pretty good. They're, as standalone issues, they're pretty neat. This one actually deals with a cop who is dealing with another cop, and this guy actually ends up he's a little insubordinate and ends up becoming the person who gets involved with this. Now, at the end of it, they all end up with superpowers, and they all end up these kind of modern superheroes is what goes down. And so Superman deals with that, and then they kind of team up against the real bad guys. I didn't like the art in this one so much. It was a little less detailed than a lot of the other stuff, but that's what you get in annual issues sometimes back in this era. And Visored Superman ends up with a friend. So they don't really have any impact on the main Superman stories, but it does show our Supermen in action when they go. So, the other storylines really got that ramping up storyline where every single one of them really ties into each other. But it's nice to kind of get a feel for who the characters are in those a little bit, which is a little refreshing break from the main storyline. All right, so there is a big alien starship that's coming, and it's going to cause problems for Earth. And we've got the Cyborg Superman in there. And in this one, he actually just really wrecks Visored Superman. And then he goes and he blames the attack on Visored Superman. And it destroys a town called Coast City, which is Green Lantern City, that he represents and hails from. And this, it turns out, we learned in this issue that Mechanical Superman is really a bad guy who is planning on taking over the Earth, and he's bringing more bad guys with him to do so. So that's where everything starts to change, and it's interesting because there were, in the last volume, we really got a lot of backstory about Superboy and a lot of backstory about the Steel guy to really like attach us to those characters and really draw us into those characters. The Visored Superman and the Cyborg Superman we really were distant from. And while I didn't like some of the issues, one of the issues was like a newspaper report about the Terminator Superman guy, Robot Superman, whatever you want to call him. And we didn't really get into his perspective and all that, and I thought it was kind of like a missed opportunity. But as we get into this, you kind of see why they were building that. Even though I didn't enjoy that issue, it actually helped make the surprise for when this happened. And then, since you're not attached to him so much, you're actually rooting for the other Supermen against him. Superboy goes off and thinking he's a hero, shows up, and then, oh, guess what? It's a trap and a trick, and he gets beat up and bloody captured in 90s fashion. We get a return to the plot line here, and Superboy is captured. We get our aliens here who are now revealed to be in league with him. And the aliens were promised, that they were going to get a stake in things, and basically, Superman or Cyborg Superman's not so much doing that. We get a little like fake hostage video where Superboy calls the Justice League and warns them off so they don't get involved. It's a good way to keep the other DCU characters out of this. Pretty nice writing on that level. And enjoyable. Roger Stern does a great job. I love Roger Stern's writing all the way around. So we get into Man of Steel, and now instead of having each Superman really get his own volume, they all kind of come together, and we see what's happening here. Oh, Lois has a little backstory where this guy kisses her because she thinks Superman's dead, and we're getting into the main deal here. Oh no! So the aliens are coming to Metropolis now, and the super folk are here to stop them. And guess what? Another Superman shows up. And the Supermen United is the next storyline. Clark is back. This builds so spectacularly. I mean, as an event, I was hooked. I didn't want to put this down the entire way. As we're learning, we get the backstory here of what's going on, and it turns out that this Mongol character, we get his whole backstory as a bad guy, and then we get Cyborg Superman's backstory as a bad guy also, and he's like basically this Reed Richards character. I say this, I don't know. It's very interesting how DC did that. I don't know what issues those are from because I really haven't read all that much of the old DC universe. But he basically is the Fantastic Four, and he comes back, but all of his people die from the radiation rather than getting superpowers, and then he causes problems and goes off and becomes like this like consciousness. And Clark's back, kisses Lois. Oh my gosh, she's kissed another man's lips. Is she gonna tell him about that? Probably not. All right. And then all the Supermen go together to go fight Cyborg Superman. So they don't actually know who he is as of yet. He just kind of explained the backstory in that explanation. And we get some really drawn-out fights as they go into the lair to try to stop them from taking on Metropolis. It turns... Okay, so Visor Superman died, and it turns out he was a character called Eradicator, who's like this like part of Krypton, their systems and whatnot, and he actually took Superman's flesh and formed his flesh around him on that, and became his own character out of this also. He's a harsh dude, but he's on the good guy's side. And they all get together, and we get another pause for the Bloodlines annual issue. One more Bloodlines annual issue, and we have pretty nice wrap up, at least within the Superman saga. There's a homeless sort of soup kitchen, and all the monsters are drawing in the homeless so they can feed on them. And of course, Superboy goes and stops it, and then a new hero shows up, who's I don't really know anything about her other than the fact that she's in this issue. So she's one of the new heroes from the Bloodline. So they will be the new line of DCU heroes, I'm sure. And then they lasted a couple issues and then went away, just like every new initiative, because these companies really do not support their new characters, unfortunately. I know they did the Batman Metal recently, and then they came out with some new line of characters again. And of course, those last like 12 issues, and then they just drop them every single time. I don't know why they bother. If they're going to do the new characters, I think it's great. I like having new characters, but it's like, just kickstart them and keep them going or something like that. I mean, fans aren't going to buy into them because they're always going to get removed. They're always going to get reset. They're always going to get ignored. So there's no reason to get invested in a character like that because they're only going to just be printing Superman again in, 12 months time or 24 months time. Yeah, it's part of the industry I don't like. Little side rant here. But we're back to the fight, and look at these muscular men being muscular. Oh my gosh, it's peak 90s. I actually very much enjoy it. I like the art style. I love how comic-y it is. Hal Jordan's on his way now, and Superman and Steel fight their way into the lair again. And here we go. It looks like they can't possibly win. Now this gets really weird. So we get an issue of Green Lantern in here, which is the only non-Superman issue in here. And it really spoils a lot of the ending. And then the Superman issue that follows, we kind of already know what happened, and so it's kind of a weird thing to read this after that. Now, I don't really know which one's better to read first because they both kind of spoil each other, but I feel like this might have been a more impactful issue, so I would almost read this Superman 82 first before the Green Lantern issue because it really resolves everything, and they really fight, and they really win. And at the end of the Green Lantern issue, Clark kind of just it doesn't follow Clark Kent's Superman Return and how he actually won the battle. It follows the outside battle of them fighting the Mongols forces, and then Clark shows up at the end and he's won, and they kind of walk away together. So knowing that he's already won kind of hurts the impact of the real Superman story when you go into it, because you already know he's won. And I don't know. I feel like maybe the Superman one should have come first, just so, I don't know, for new readers like myself almost, you kind of want to see how he comes out of it and follow the main story first, and then I'd kind of put that side Green Lantern story second. But I don't know. But here we are. We're back in uniform now. Supergirl, it was part of his sort of team there. She can go invisible, so nobody knew she was there for a while, and she's the Deus Ex Machina who helps save everything. And then he's finally back. So he had lost his powers when he comes back, so he's not as powerful. And that's the drama in this, is that, can he survive against this all-powerful mechanoid Superman? And he did. So there you go. It wrapped up very well. Very enjoyable. I mean, for such a huge volume, I was enthralled the whole way. This is a great storyline all the way around. And then we get some wrap-up issues. So we got, Superman coming back. We've got the wrap-up with Supergirl and all that. And we get a little Superboy wrap-up of what's going on. This girl was kind of being a bad reporter and working for somebody who's like fabricating news, and she quit at this point. And then Superman's pulling people out of the rubble and just being super. How nice. Very nice. And we get one more issue of wrap-up. I think we get two more issues of wrap-up. So good stuff. We kind of learn the things that are happening with Visor Superman and Supergirl. We learn a little bit more about Doomsday here. Not too much, though. That comes in the next volume, which I'll go on about in a sec. And here's the last Funeral for a Friend, where he meets Azrael Batman. So now Batman, basically, in his own book, is going through the same nonsense as Superman, where it's not actually Superman behind there, and or not actually Batman in there. And honestly, that's a good event too. It's really interesting how both of these books could have both the main characters kind of bow out of the books for about a year's time, and still be carried and still have an interesting story and be done very well. You don't see that a lot. And for both events to go off so smoothly as they did it's kind of the opposite of what I see in a lot of events these days. So very cool. A nice nod to Batman there because he had to do that. And then we get our final wrap up. There he is with the Justice League, yay. And happy birthday, Superman, the end. Okay, so overall, it was great. I love, the art's pretty DC house style for the most of it. You can see the issues where it's got a little less detailed art that's not quite as good, but you know, it doesn't detract from anything. The storytelling's good all the way through, quick paced. This is a must-read, I would say, if you're interested in Superman, if you're interested in DC at all. Very high quality. Call it a 9 out of 10, just because some of the breaks in there, and it was a little drawn out at points. But this is an event the way that they're supposed to be done. So if you like these videos, hit that like and subscribe button, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.